It started with a heart. Not the dramatic, bleeding kind, just a simple, hand-drawn heart in black Sharpie on the side of a paper coffee cup. I noticed it as I was walking back to my car, late for work as usual, and thought maybe one of the baristas had just been bored. The thing is, it was next to my name, Eli Redheart. That morning, like every morning, I had walked into Bramble and Bean half awake, ordered my usual oat milk latte, no foam, from the same exhausted college-age guy who never remembered me. I'd barely looked at the barista making the drinks. Didn't even register the new face behind the counter until I was already outside and sipping. But the heart stuck with me. All day, actually. The next morning, I looked for him, and there he was. The guy from the day before, definitely new, definitely not one of the regulars, was behind the espresso machine again, pulling shots with his sleeves rolled up to the elbow. He had this messy, lazy kind of hotness to him. Wavy dark hair tucked under a beanie, a sharp jawline dusted with stubble, and the kind of forearms that make you start questioning things. He moved like he was either just waking up or had been up all night. When I ordered, he looked up. "Oat milk latte, no foam?" I blinked. "Yeah, that's me." His mouth twitched, just slightly. "Cool, got it." And then he went back to making it like he hadn't just casually remembered a stranger's exact order. I waited by the end of the bar, pretending to read my emails while sneaking glances at him. He didn't look at me again. Just worked. Fluid, focused, a little bit intense. When he called my name and handed over the cup, I didn't look at him. I looked straight at the cup. There it was again. A heart, smaller this time, tucked under the loop of the E in my name. But definitely intentional. I didn't say anything. Just nodded and walked out like I wasn't currently having a low-key identity crisis over a hand-drawn heart. That was Tuesday. By Friday, it had become a thing. He was always there. Always remembered my drink. Always drew something on the cup. One day, it was a tiny sun. Another, a crooked little smiley face. Then a heart again. Bigger. I hadn't even flirted with him. Not really. I didn't even know if he was gay, or just one of those effortlessly warm people who are friendly to everyone. But there was something in the way he handed me the drink, the way his fingers would linger just long enough to make mine feel warm, even through the cup. That Friday morning, he finally said something different. "Eli," he said, handing me the cup, "you ever stay, or are you just a grab-and-go kind of guy?" I looked at him, really looked. His eyes were blue, deep blue, not just nice blue. The kind that made you blink because they felt too intimate for daylight. "Usually go," I said, holding up the cup. "But this coffee's kind of been getting more interesting lately." He smiled, slow and crooked. "I get bored. You're my canvas." I raised an eyebrow. "So I'm just an art project to you?" He gave a mock serious nod. "Yeah, a muse." The mysterious coffee guy. I stood there for another second, and then did something I never did. I turned and sat down at one of the empty tables by the window. He glanced over once, and when he saw me sitting, his smile changed. It wasn't big, just quiet, like he'd been waiting for me to stop and notice. The cafe was small, maybe 5 tables, a couch with mismatched cushions, and a corner shelf with books that nobody ever touched. It had the charm of a place that was never trying too hard. That Friday was the first time I noticed how much the morning light poured in through the tall windows, how it made the steam from the espresso machine look like smoke from some enchanted forest. Okay, maybe I was projecting. I sipped the latte slowly, pretending to scroll on my phone while very much not paying attention to anything on the screen. I was watching him, this mystery barista who knew my name, my drink, and kept drawing little things on my cup like it was some secret language. At one point, he looked up and caught me staring. I expected him to glance away, maybe act embarrassed. But he didn't. He just smirked like he was used to people looking at him and didn't mind at all. That smirk should have annoyed me. It didn't. When he finished the rush of orders, he pulled off his beanie, ran a hand through his hair, and walked toward the front of the shop, toward me. He didn't say anything right away, just leaned against the counter that divided the bar area from the tables and wiped his hands on a towel. "So," he said, nodding toward my cup, "what'd you think of today's masterpiece?" I held it up. "A star inside a heart. What does that mean?" He gave a shrug. "Could mean a lot of things." Maybe it's just a doodle. Maybe it means you're a star and someone's heart is getting kind of full. I raised an eyebrow. Whose heart? Guess that's the mystery. We stared at each other for a second, and I laughed, because I genuinely didn't know what else to do with how casually flirty this guy was being. Do you do this with everyone? Draw things? Make cryptic jokes? Only the ones who actually sit down, he said. And tip. Smooth. He smiled like he'd won something, then nodded toward my cup. I'm Wes, by the way, not just Barista guy. Thought you might want a name to go with the mystery. Eli, I said, even though he already knew it. He didn't leave right away, just stood there for another moment, like he was debating something. Then someone else came in and he gave me a small nod before heading back behind the counter. I sat there longer than I planned, just sipping and thinking and half hoping he'd come back over. But he didn't. Not again that morning. That night, I told my friend Nadia about him over drinks. There's this new guy at the cafe, I said, trying to sound casual. He keeps drawing hearts and stuff on my coffee cups. She raised an eyebrow. Cute barista flirting with you? That's like a gay rite of passage. I'm not even sure he's into guys, I said. Eli, she said, giving me a look. He's drawing hearts on your name. That's practically a proposal. I laughed, but shook my head. He could just be friendly. Or bored. Did he ask you to stay? Yes. And did you stay? Yes. She leaned back. Then he's into you. And if you don't ask him out, I swear to God I'm marching down there and doing it myself. I didn't sleep great that night. Not because I was nervous or anxious, but because I couldn't stop replaying that conversation. The way Wes had looked at me when I sat down. The way his voice dipped when he said, mystery. The weird warmth I'd felt in my chest when he said my name, even though it was just a name. The next morning, I went back. Same drink, same time. This time, he didn't wait for me to say anything. As soon as I stepped up, he smiled and said, you sat yesterday. That was new. Maybe I just needed to check if you were putting something in the milk, I said. Guilty, he replied. Caffeine and unspoken affection. Deadly combo. I couldn't help it. I blushed. And I do not blush. He passed the cup to me, but instead of letting go right away, his fingers lingered over mine, just long enough to make it deliberate. I looked down at the cup. A little envelope was drawn under my name, with a heart sealed into it. What's this? I asked. A letter, he said. But you'll have to sit down if you want to read what it says. That time, I sat before he even turned away. I sat in the same spot by the window, the one with the wobbly leg I now instinctively braced with my foot. I peeled the cup sleeve down, just in case he'd tucked something under it. Nothing. No hidden message. Just the drawing. A neat little envelope with a heart where the seal would be. It was stupid how long I stared at it, like it might open itself if I looked hard enough. Wes was back behind the bar, pretending not to be watching me. I knew he was. I could feel it, the same way you feel the sun on your back before you step into the light. Eventually, I gave in. I stood up, walked back over, and leaned my elbows on the wooden counter. Okay, I said. What's the letter say? He looked up from the milk pitcher he was rinsing. What letter? I held the cup up. This one. You told me I'd have to sit to read it. He smiled faintly, didn't speak right away. Then, it says, hey, I like when you stay. He said it so casually, like it wasn't the first thing in days to make my stomach do a weird, hopeful flip. I thought I was just your muse. Maybe it's both. I didn't have a good response for that, at least not one that wouldn't come out awkward or way too revealing. So I cleared my throat and said the first, non-stupid thing I could think of. You guys hiring? He raised an eyebrow. You want to work here? No, I said. I just want to spend more time near the espresso machine. Feels safe. He chuckled, a quiet sound, then leaned on his side of the counter. There was a pause. You're not seeing anyone, are you? He asked, just like that. It caught me off guard. Not because it was blunt, but because there was no hesitation behind it. Like he'd decided he was going to ask, and then just did. No, I said. You? He shook his head. Not really. I laughed. What does not really mean? It means, he said, that I've gone on a few dates that all ended with me realizing I was trying to make a connection with people I didn't actually feel anything with. And now? Now I keep drawing hearts on a customer's coffee cup. I couldn't look at him. Not directly. My fingers traced the edge of the sleeve, suddenly aware of how warm the drink still was, how much warmer I felt now. There was a tap on the register. Someone else waiting to order. Wes stepped away, and I took my seat again, watching him work. His shoulders were relaxed, his hands quick, confident. He made eye contact with people, smiled at the old lady who always asked too many questions. But every few minutes, his eyes flicked back toward me. It didn't feel like flirting anymore. It felt like we were waiting for something to tip. Around 10:30, the crowd thinned out. Wes ducked behind the side wall to grab something from the back, and I was just finishing my drink when he reappeared, wiping his hands. "You sticking around?" he asked, nodding toward the empty cup. I held it up. "Just finished." He looked disappointed. Just a flicker. Then he said, "Want to walk with me?" "I'm on break." I blinked. Yeah, sure." We stepped out into the morning air together. It was chilly in that late winter kind of way. Sunny but not warm. The kind of weather that tricks you into leaving your jacket at home and then regrets it. Wes pulled his beanie lower over his ears. "There's a spot a couple blocks down. Quiet. Sounds like you're luring me somewhere." If I was, would it be working? I smiled, didn't answer, just followed him. We walked 2 blocks in silence. It wasn't awkward, just full. Like, neither of us needed to talk to fill it. He led us to this small park I'd passed a dozen times, but never really noticed. A tucked-away triangle of grass and benches surrounded by bare trees and an old iron fence. He sat on the cold stone edge of a planter, patted the space beside him. I sat. "I like this place," he said, looking out at the street. "You can hear just enough of the city to remember where you are, but not enough to ruin the peace." "You've lived here long?" "Moved last year, after a breakup." I looked at him. "Serious?" He nodded. 3 years. We were gonna get a dog and everything." "That's serious." "Yeah, but it wasn't right in the end. Just kind of unraveled." I didn't say anything for a minute. Then, "So is that why you started flirting with strangers on to-go cups?" He grinned. "You're not a stranger. You're Eli. You drink oat milk. You walk like someone who's always thinking about 5 things at once. And you try not to look up when you're listening to something emotional." I turned to him. "You watch me that closely?" "Yeah," he said, "I do." And that was it. That was the moment it clicked for both of us, that this wasn't just fun or casual or flirting for the sake of passing time. There was something here. It had been building in the white space between sentences, in the steam from the espresso, in the ink strokes on cardboard. I didn't kiss him. Not yet, but I wanted to. And when I stood up to leave, and he said, "Come back tomorrow," I didn't hesitate. "Yeah," I said. "Of course." Saturday was quiet. I showed up later than usual, closer to noon, hoping he'd still be there, and not entirely sure what I'd say if he was. He was. Behind the counter, head down, concentrating hard on the foam art of someone else's cappuccino. His sleeves were rolled up again, exposing that same tangle of tattoos on his right forearm. Lines and swirls and shapes I'd never gotten close enough to really study. He didn't see me come in. I stood in line like everyone else, suddenly unsure if we were picking up from yesterday, or if that was one of those conversations that lives fully in a park and never survives the real world. But when it was my turn, he looked up. And he smiled. Not the casual barista smile. It was slower, softer, almost shy. "Eli," he said, like it was a question and a greeting at once. "You came. Thought I'd get a late start today." "Big plans?" "Just wanted coffee." He smirked at that, already reaching for a cup. Same drink? Yeah. I watched him as he worked. I knew the rhythm now. The way he shook the pitcher once, always once, before steaming the milk. The way he tapped the portafilter just a little too hard on the edge of the knockbox. The way he looked up every few minutes to check the line, and how his eyes always found me when he did. He handed me the cup without a word. This time, I flipped it around before I even moved. And there it was, a tiny coffee cup drawn in marker, steam curling up in the shape of another heart. Inside the steam, in tiny script, it said, "For the one who stayed." I looked up. He was already working on the next drink, face slightly pink. No one had ever flirted with me in doodles before. I wasn't sure what to do with it. Part of me wanted to lean across the counter and say something bold. The other part just wanted to memorize the shape of his handwriting. I sat again. Same table, same spot. And again, he watched me. Not constantly, just when the rush slowed and he had a moment to breathe. Every time our eyes met, he looked away first. But not fast. Just slow enough that I knew it wasn't avoidance. He was giving me space. Eventually, he slid out from behind the bar, tossing his apron into a bin. A manager-type barista, a woman I'd seen before, waved him off like she already knew he was going to disappear for a while. He walked over casually, with a disposable water cup in hand, and slid into the seat across from me. "I get a longer break today," he said, sipping. "Perks of being charming." "Oh," I said, mock serious. "Is that how it works? Charm equals longer lunch?" "Exactly. Some of us draw cute things. Others just don't clock out and hope nobody notices." I smiled. "So which are you?" he shrugged. "Depends who's watching." I didn't look away. "I am." He blinked, but didn't flinch. "Then definitely the cute drawings." It got quiet then. Not awkward, not full of tension. Just quiet. I let myself look at him, really look. His features were sharp, but his expression softened everything. He had this permanent little crease at the corner of his mouth, like he smiled more than he let on. His hands were fidgeting slightly, tugging at the edge of his sleeve. "You always flirt with customers?" I asked. "Not really," he said. "Just the ones who seem like they need a reason to slow down." That got me. I didn't know what about it hit so hard. Maybe because it was true. He looked up, noticing the shift in my face. "I didn't mean that in a bad way." "No, I know," I said. "You're not wrong. I'm kind of always moving." I noticed. There was something vulnerable about that moment. Something I hadn't expected to feel at a coffee shop table, with a guy the first barely knew whose handwriting was already familiar to me. "I think I've been waiting for someone to notice," I said. Wes's voice got quieter. "Then I'm glad I did." I looked at the cup again. "For the one who stayed." "I read. You always this poetic with your regulars?" He laughed. "You're not a regular. Not anymore." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh? What am I now?" He didn't answer right away. Just gave that soft, almost nervous smile again. Then, quietly, "Someone I'd like to keep drawing for." Something warm flickered in my chest. Not fire, just steady heat. He checked his watch. "I should get back." I nodded, reluctantly. Wes stood up, then hesitated. "You free tonight?" I blinked. "Tonight?" "Yeah. There's this outdoor market by the river. Food trucks, music, string lights. Kinda cheesy, but good vibes." I didn't even pretend to think it over. "Yeah," I said. "I'm free." He grinned. "Cool. Meet you there?" "Text me the details," I said, handing him my phone without thinking. He typed fast, then handed it back. And just like that, it was set. When he left to go back behind the counter, I looked at the cup again. Steam. Heart, lettering. But what I didn't notice the first time, a tiny pair of initials scrawled near the base. W plus E. Wes and Eli. I don't think I stopped smiling the whole walk home. By the time I got home, I'd already stared at Wes's text 5 times. He'd sent the location, a time, 7:30, and a message that just said, "I'll be the one with bad hair and too much confidence." I texted back, "I'll be the one overthinking his outfit." He sent a winking emoji. I didn't even know how to get ready for something like this. Was it a date? Just hanging out? Did it matter? I changed shirts twice. Went with a denim jacket, even though it was too warm. Undid the top button of my shirt. Then did it back up. Then undid it again. It was ridiculous. I felt 17. The market was already buzzing when I got there. Music drifted from a stage across the lawn, mixing with the sounds of people talking, laughing, flipping through vinyl bins and eating tacos on benches. It smelled like grilled onions, sugar, and rain on asphalt. I spotted him near a Vietnamese food truck, standing casually with his hands in his jacket pockets. Same messy beanie from the cafe, same half grin. When he saw me, he stood straighter, like he'd been nervous and trying not to show it. "You came," he said as I walked up. "You invited me." "Still," he said, "you showed up." We stood there for a second, and I wasn't sure what came next. Do we hug? High five? Just start eating? He made the choice for us. He gave me a quick, one-armed hug. Casual, but warm. It left my shoulder tingling. "You hungry?" he asked, already nodding toward the line. "Starving." We stood in line for banh mi and shared a bag of chili garlic fries from the stall next door. He insisted on paying. I offered to buy dessert later. It felt stupidly easy, like we'd done it before. Wes wasn't nervous the way I'd expected. He was laid back, fast to joke, but not in a performative way. He talked about his job, how he only started at Bramble and Bean because a friend dared him to barista for a month. That was 6 months ago. "I stayed," he said, "because it was the first job I didn't hate going to." "That's rare." "Yeah, and then you started coming in. So then it got interesting." I paused, chewing slower. "You flirt with every customer who orders oat milk?" He smiled. "Only the ones who look like they might need a little extra warmth." We walked around the market after that. He stopped to look at handmade rings at one stall, and I caught him trying one on. He noticed me watching and offered a half smile. "You ever wear rings?" "No," I said. "Feels like trying too hard." He studied me for a second, then slipped the ring off and handed it back to the vendor. "You're more of a subtle guy anyway," he said. We kept moving. Eventually, we found a quiet spot near the edge of the Riverwalk. The water reflected the glow of string lights overhead, and the sound of the crowd faded into a low murmur. We sat on a low stone wall, shoulders not quite touching. I wanted to say something about how nice this felt, how easy, but before I could, he beat me to it. "You're different from the guys I usually talk to," he said. "Oh? Yeah, you're calm." "I don't feel calm," I said. "Exactly," he said. "You act like someone holding back 1,000 thoughts all at once. It's interesting." I let that settle between us. He wasn't wrong. "And what about you?" I asked. "What kind of guy are you?" He looked out at the river for a moment. "I'm the guy who moves around a lot. Gets bored easily, wants to feel something, but doesn't always stick around long enough to figure out what." That surprised me. I turned to look at him. "But you've stuck around here." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, guess I have." And then he looked at me. There was a beat. A moment. If it had been a movie, the music would have swelled, and he would have kissed me right there. Fries on our breath, strangers laughing in the background, 1,000 tiny lights twinkling above us. But he didn't. Instead, he said, "Do you want to walk some more?" "Yeah," I said, even though I kinda didn't. I kinda just wanted him to kiss me. We walked anyway. Talked about nothing for a while. About how he grew up in a town with more cows than people. How I used to write short stories and stopped for no good reason. How we both used to think 30 sounded ancient until we got close to it. Eventually, we circled back to the parking lot. He walked me to my car. "So," he said, hands in his pockets, "did I earn a second heart on my own cup?" "I don't draw on people's drinks," I said. "That's kinda your thing." "Fair." We lingered again. It was one of those long, loaded silences where neither person moves because they don't want to be the one to say goodbye. I leaned in half an inch. So did he. But then a car nearby honked and the moment broke. He laughed softly. "Another time?" he said, his voice just a little quieter than before. "Yeah," I said, wishing I could hit pause on the night. "Definitely." He pulled out his phone. "Don't go ghost on me." "I won't." He smiled one more time, then turned and walked off toward his own car. I sat in mine, watching him go, hands still on the door handle. Then I looked at my coffee cup, still sitting in the passenger seat. There was something else scribbled underneath the heart I hadn't seen before. Tiny, messy handwriting. "Don't let this be just a caffeine thing." We didn't kiss that night. And I don't know if it made it sweeter or harder, but either way, I kept replaying it. Him under the string lights that almost touch, the nervous laugh when the moment passed. It wasn't just the attraction anymore. It was something gentler, a current pulling in a little stronger every time we got close. Sunday came and went without a text. I didn't send one either, not because I wasn't thinking about him. I was. But there was something about letting the night settle, letting the space breathe a little. Maybe I was testing the quiet to see what it meant. Monday morning, I walked into Bramble and Bean at my usual time, expecting the same scene. Him at the bar, eyes flicking up with that familiar smirk. But the counter was empty. No Wes. Just the manager, Jill, and a new kid who looked overwhelmed by the espresso machine. "He's off today," Jill said before I could ask. "Mondays are his recharge day." I nodded like that made sense, even though I felt a little stupid for not knowing. "No worries," I said, forcing a smile. "Tell him the oat milk guy stopped by." Jill grinned. "Oh, he'll know exactly who that is." I sat with my coffee anyway, even though it didn't taste quite right. The foam wasn't smooth. The cup was blank. It was like someone handed me a page without a sentence. I kept checking my phone all day. Not obsessively. Just often enough to call it what it was. Nothing came. But the next morning, Tuesday, I walked in and there he was, back behind the counter, laughing with Jill over something dumb, like he hadn't been on my mind for 2 straight days. He looked up as I stepped in and his face shifted immediately. The smile changed. Less amused, more real. "Morning, Eli," he said, already reaching for a cup. "Oat milk? No foam?" "You remember." "I remember everything," he said, scribbling on the cup. Kind of my tragic flaw. I stood there, wondering if I should say something about the other night. About how I almost kissed him. About how I thought he almost kissed me too. But he didn't bring it up. And neither did I. Not yet. Instead, when he handed me the cup, he tapped the lid. "Don't open it yet. Sit down first." I obeyed, walking back to the table like it was routine now. Because it was. I always sat when he was on shift. Once I was seated, I peeled the lid off and looked inside. Foam art. A heart. As usual. But drawn beside it with cocoa powder was a tiny umbrella. I grinned, and when I looked up, Wes was watching from behind the bar. When the lull in customers came, he slipped away and joined me. "You ever notice," he said, sliding into the seat across from me, "how the best conversations happen right before it rains?" I looked out the window. Sure enough, gray clouds were thickening in the distance. "You trying to be poetic again?" I asked. He smiled. "Maybe. Or maybe I just wanted an excuse to sit here with you for a little longer. I didn't see you yesterday." "Missed me?" he asked, teasing. I didn't answer right away. Then, "Yeah, kind of." He sat back, visibly pleased. "You were on my mind too." That quiet hit us again. Comfortable, but weighted. We were circling something. "I keep thinking about Friday night," I said, deciding to just name it. His gaze dropped, then lifted. "Yeah? You almost kissed me." He didn't flinch. "You almost kissed me back." I nodded. "So what are we doing?" Wes leaned forward. I don't know, but I like it. You always this slow with guys? No, he said. But I don't want to rush this. Not with you. That silenced me, because it meant something. It felt honest. You're a little dangerous, you know, I said. He raised an eyebrow. Dangerous? You make things feel easy, and I'm not used to that. Wes smiled gently. Maybe it's not dangerous. Maybe it's just what it's supposed to be. Rain started tapping the windows then, soft at first, just enough to underline the silence. He stood up slowly. You busy later? Not really. You want to come by the shop after close? Around 6? I tilted my head. To help you mop the floors? Sure, he said. If by mop, you mean sit on the counter and listen to music while I close. Sounds like a plan. He gave a small nod, then disappeared back behind the counter. I stayed longer than usual that morning. Not because the coffee was better. Not even because of the doodle. But because I didn't want to break the rhythm we were starting to build. The kind of rhythm that made a Tuesday morning feel like the beginning of something. The cafe felt different after the doors were locked. Quiet. Calm. But in a way that made everything feel like it was holding its breath. Wes had just finished wiping down the last of the counters when I arrived. The soft hum of the fridge was the only sound in the air. He was wearing a hoodie now, sleeves pulled up to reveal his arms. His tattoos always intrigued me, though I still hadn't dared to ask about them. His fingers drummed lightly on the edge of the counter as he looked up at me. You made it. I nodded, stepping into the warmth of the cafe. I told you I would. The door clicked shut behind me and Wes turned off the lights, except for the small hanging bulbs over the bar. The low, golden glow made the space feel intimate in a way it never had during the busy hours of the day. You want anything to drink? He asked, pulling 2 beers from the fridge behind the bar. I've got some local stuff we could share. I shook my head. No thanks. I'm good. All right. You're a straight-edge guy, huh? I half smiled. Not really. I just don't think beer and caffeine are a great combination. Wes laughed and opened his bottle, taking a sip before setting it down on the counter. Fair enough. So tell me something. What's been on your mind since you walked in this morning? I raised an eyebrow. You really want to know? He looked at me, the usual smirk gone. There was only sincerity in his eyes now. Yeah, I do. There was a quiet weight in the air now, one that made it harder to breathe than it should have been. The space between us had shifted since that moment in the park. I wasn't sure what we were calling this. Whatever it was, it had shifted from a simple connection to something bigger, something more fragile, like the first crack of ice in winter. I walked over to the counter, leaning against it, unsure where to begin. I guess I'm trying to figure out if you really mean all this, I said, looking down at my hands. You know, all the heart stuff, the almost kisses, the messages. I could feel Wes watching me, his gaze steady, but still gentle. He didn't interrupt. I don't know how to take all of it. I feel like I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop. Wes took a long pause, his thumb lightly rubbing the edge of his beer bottle. Then, he met my eyes, and his voice was soft but firm. You're not the only one who feels that way. That stopped me. I didn't expect that answer. What do you mean? I mean, I get it. I've been drawing hearts on your cups for weeks now. But it's not because I'm trying to make you think it's all easy or perfect. He stepped closer, leaning across the counter, his face inches from mine. It's because I see something in you I haven't seen in anyone else. And yeah, it scares me. But it's real. There it was. He wasn't pulling back anymore. Wes was opening up, completely. He wasn't hiding behind the art or the little flirtations. He wasn't playing games. I've been moving in circles for a long time, he said, his voice quieter now, chasing something I couldn't catch. But when you walk in here every day, when you just sit there with your coffee, not looking for anything else, I don't know. I guess I felt like maybe I could catch something real. I could feel my heartbeat pick up, like the pace was suddenly racing to catch up with everything he was saying. I opened my mouth to respond, but he stopped me with a raised hand. "You don't have to say anything," he said. "Not yet." It was one of those moments where everything in the room fell into stillness. The faint buzz of the fridge, the soft hum of the city outside. It was all distant noise compared to the hum between us. For the first time since I'd met him, I could see the real Wes. The guy who wasn't making coffee for a paycheck. The guy who wasn't drawing hearts to fill time. He was someone who wanted more. And, in some strange way, I wanted more too. "I guess I'm just trying to figure out what more is," I said, my voice almost a whisper. "You know? Because I don't do things like this." "Neither do I," Wes said with a slight grin, but his eyes remained serious. "But that's what makes it feel right, I guess." I didn't know what to say to that. I didn't have the words. So instead, I just stayed there, watching him, trying to read his face, trying to see if he meant it. His eyes softened. "Do you want to stay?" he asked, his voice quieter. "I've got some vinyls I've been meaning to listen to. I thought we could just hang out. No pressure." There was something so normal about it. No expectations, no forced conversation. Just a night where I could sit and listen to music with a guy who was slowly becoming something more than a barista in my life. I nodded. "Yeah, I'd like that." Wes grinned, and this time, it wasn't flirtation. It was just him, happy and easy. "Good." He grabbed a couple records from the shelf behind the counter, setting them on the turntable. The needle dropped, and the first notes of a slow, smooth jazz track filled the space. Wes slid into the seat across from me, and for the next hour, we just listened. It wasn't anything extraordinary. It wasn't some big romantic gesture. It was just two people sitting together, letting the world move around them while they stayed still. By the time the last song on the record played, the cafe had gone quiet, except for the hum of the city outside. It was just us, with the soft flicker of the overhead lights and the smell of coffee still lingering in the air. "I don't want this to just be a cafe thing," Wes said, his voice low, almost shy now. "But if it is, that's okay too. I just wanted to make sure you knew I meant what I said. That I'm not here for a quick fix. Not this time." I didn't need more words to understand him. Not anymore. "I get it," I said, standing up. "And I'm not here for a quick fix either." We stood in silence for a moment, both of us trying to figure out what came next. Then Wes walked over, his hand brushing against mine as he pulled the door open. We stood in the doorway for a second, the cool air of the night slipping inside. "I'll see you tomorrow?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah." And just like that, I walked out the door, into the cool night air, knowing that whatever came next, I wasn't going to have to figure it out alone. The next morning, I showed up earlier than usual. I don't know why exactly. Maybe I wanted to beat the crowd. Maybe I just wanted to see Wes when the light still made the cafe windows glow like amber. Maybe I was tired of pretending the thing between us was anything less than real. When I walked in, he was already at the espresso machine, his back to me, sleeves rolled up, focused. He didn't hear the bell. I stood there a moment, watching him the way you watch someone when you're finally allowed to stare, when the wondering has given way to knowing. He looked up then, like he could feel me. Our eyes met. He smiled. No smirk, no playful tilt, just a soft smile that reached all the way to his eyes. "Morning," he said. "You're early." "Yeah. Thought I'd try being the first name on the cup for once." He nodded, pulling out a clean cup and grabbing the Sharpie like it was second nature. And it was, but this time he paused with the marker in hand. "Actually," he said, "you want to come back here?" I blanked. "Behind the bar?" He nodded again. "Just for a second." I slipped around the side, past the register, and stood next to him as he handed me the cup and marker. "You do it today," he said. I looked down at the blank surface. "What am I writing?" He shrugged. "Whatever you want." I hesitated. Then I wrote, "Wes." Underneath it, I added, "For the guy who stopped time." He looked at it, then at me. I didn't know I could do that. You've been doing it since the first heart. We stood close, not touching, but near enough to feel the heat coming off each other. The cafe was quiet, still opening. No music yet. No customers. Just us and the sound of the steam wand hissing softly in the background. He took the cup gently, held it like it was something delicate. "Can I do something?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, not even waiting to hear what. He leaned in slowly. No hesitation this time, no interruptions. And kissed me. It wasn't dramatic. No sweeping motion. Just a slow, certain kiss that settled somewhere between a beginning and a promise. His lips were warm, soft, and his hand touched the side of my neck like he wasn't trying to hold me, just connect. When we pulled back, I kept my forehead against his for a second. "I've been waiting for that," I whispered. "I know," he said. "Me too." And from that day on, there were no more hearts drawn on my coffee cups. Not because they stopped meaning something, but because I didn't need them anymore. He was there, every morning. Some days I'd sit. Some days I'd help him close. Some nights he'd show up at my door with takeout and a record under his arm. Other nights we'd just lie on my couch in silence, watching whatever show we both pretended to follow. It wasn't fast. It wasn't perfect. But it was ours. And weeks later, when I asked him, half joking, what happened to all the Sharpies he used to keep in his apron, he reached into a drawer and pulled out a cup, my name, a heart, and underneath a question written in tiny black letters, "First date?" I never threw that cup away, and I never drank coffee anywhere else again.